Wait, why is everything so different in Germany suddenly? I was only gone for a few months. Or, wait, have I changed? Hallo, Servus, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Feli. I'm originally from Munich, Germany, but I've been living here in Cincinnati, Ohio, on and off since 2016. In my last video, I talked about the biggest differences between Germany and the US, aka the biggest culture shocks I experienced when I first came here, and the things that I notice now when I come back to the US after a trip back home to Germany. You can find the video up here or in the info box. And I kind of mentioned that I've also experienced reverse culture shock before when going back to Germany. And I asked you guys if you'd want to hear more about that, and you said yes. So this video is going to be all about reverse culture shock. Now, before I share my personal experiences, what does reverse culture shock even mean? I looked it up in different dictionaries, and it turns out that the term doesn't actually show up a lot. I did, however, find a Wikipedia entry of it and mentions on different university websites. And I felt like this one from Webster University in St. Louis summarized it pretty well. Reverse culture shock is a term used to describe the feelings of surprise, disorientation, confusion, etc. experienced when people return to their home country and find they do not fit in as they used to. This may be due to a change in perspective, a decrease in excitement, an appreciation for and of different customs, or because during the travels, the home country was idealized. I think this gives a pretty good overview of what reverse culture shock is in general, even though, of course, every person has different experiences with this. Some people might struggle with it after just being abroad for a couple weeks as a tourist. Others might live abroad for years and not have reverse culture shock at all when returning home. For me personally, since I travel back and forth between Germany and the US quite a lot, I often get asked if I feel like a foreigner when I first come back to Germany after being gone for a longer period of time, and if there are things that I miss about the US when I'm in Germany. The answer is, I don't actually experience a lot of reverse culture shock anymore today, but I definitely did at the beginning. When I went home to Germany after my first long-term stay in the US, which was a 5-month-long exchange semester, it was one of the weirdest feelings I've ever experienced. The second I landed on German soil, everything felt so familiar, yet so insanely different. Like, I knew that the streets are a lot narrower in Germany, but in the moment, it felt like they had shrunk even more since I left. And that's how I felt about a lot of things at first. It was like the things that I knew were different about Germany had become even more extreme. And at the time, I experienced that mostly in a negative way. I didn't really notice the positive differences as much. It was almost like I even missed the negative things about the US, as if they were like little quirks that I had gotten used to during my time there. Kind of a distorted view on things. I should probably mention that when my exchange semester was over, I really wasn't ready to leave just yet. I had really enjoyed my time in the US, and I had been embracing all these new things in the new country. So basically, I had overcome the initial culture shock part, where you have a hard time getting used to how things work in the new country and always wish things would be like they are at home. And then boom, I went through the same thing again at home, just the other way around. As I mentioned, one of the first things that stood out to me was how narrow the streets were and how everything was just so much smaller than in the US. The cars, the fridge, the packaging sizes, the stores, everything really. I also remember that it felt really weird to me that everyone was speaking German. I know that sounds pretty dumb because duh, of course everyone speaks German in Germany. It's your native language, what's your problem? But for some reason, it did feel weird that suddenly everything was in my native language again and there were no language barriers whatsoever. Plus, suddenly I was normal again. There was nothing that I had trouble understanding, but I also couldn't play the "sorry, I'm an exchange student" card anymore, which counted as an excuse for a lot of things. And when I then explained that I was from Germany, people usually reacted with, "You're from Germany? That's so cool." And then it would lead into a whole conversation. Now, I was just one of over 80 million Germans again. Nothing interesting. And I don't mean that in a "oh, I like being special" way, but it did feel weird going from that special outsider role to just being normal again. Then I remember like the first or second day that I was back, I went to the bakery to get some bread rolls for a brunch with friends, and I was in a really good mood, super excited for the good bread that I hadn't had in months. But then it really got to me that the woman behind the counter didn't say hello or you're welcome or wish me a good day. Well, I was being all friendly and polite. And that's when I was like, damn, so that's what tourists mean when they say that Germans are rude to them. I remember that it really ruined my mood that day, even though I should have been used to it. Like, I had never considered Germans to be rude before. I knew that they weren't as overly friendly as customer service workers in the US or in the UK, for example, but I always thought that if anything, I'd prefer the straight-to-the-point way that things worked in Germany. But after I had gotten used to the American way, even I suddenly felt caught off guard by it. And the woman at the bakery wasn't actually being rude. She just asked what I wanted, gave it to me, and told me the price, all with a straight face, and then moved on to the next customer. German efficiency, pretty normal. And yet, I suddenly asked myself, wait, did I do something wrong? And let me tell you, it's a weird feeling to have. To feel like a stranger in your own country. To feel like you forgot how things work there. Or simply don't enjoy it anymore. It kind of makes you ask yourself, where am I at home then? But let's not get too dramatic and move on, because there are a few more things that I had to get used to again in Germany, like the way that people dress, for example. It's just a more fashionable style overall than in Ohio, especially in Munich. Suddenly, I couldn't go everywhere in gym clothes and messy hair anymore without feeling looked at or judged. Plus, for the first time ever, I also experienced the infamous German stare. Quick explanation, a lot of people from other countries that visit Germany always say that Germans stare at them in public. I, having grown up in Germany, obviously never noticed that until my exchange semester in the US. That's when I realized that here, people on the streets don't necessarily look at each other unless they do it with a smile or they greet each other. But besides that, you just look somewhere else. I, however, naturally straight up looked at people in the beginning, and I noticed myself that I was doing something differently there than everyone else. And once I was back in Germany, I really noticed how people just look at each other, or stare at each other, if you will, when they pass each other on the sidewalk or on the subway, and I didn't like that at all. I also remember that I found it pretty annoying that you didn't get any free water at restaurants and just had to stay thirsty or pay a fortune for beverages that came in tiny glasses on top of that. Also, nothing I had ever questioned before I went abroad. Nowadays, I can say that I don't experience a lot of culture shock or reverse culture shock anymore, both ways. I said this in the last video too, but I noticed the differences much more in the beginning, and then the more I traveled back and forth, the more I got used to these different realities, and my brain started to kind of just save both places with their individual features. So now when I travel to Germany, even if it's been a few months, it always feels like I was just there yesterday, and I don't get thrown off by the size of things or by people speaking German or anything like that. There are really only a couple small things nowadays that feel weird to me whenever I go back to Germany. One of those things is what I mentioned in the last video too, when I go to a store and people just squeeze by me without saying anything, or when I'm standing in front of a shelf and someone just comes up, steps right in front of me and grabs something out of the shelf without even acknowledging my existence. While I keep saying Entschuldigung every time I even just walk by someone kind of closely, not even touching them, because I'm so used to doing that here in the US, or at least in the Midwest. And all the Germans around me probably just think to themselves, what's she apologizing for? Or another thing is when I want to pay with my card at the checkout, I often forget that you can't just go ahead and pay with it in Germany. You usually have to tell the cashier that you would like to use your card to pay so that they can activate the machine first. Or depending on the store, you ask if it's possible to pay with card. And one thing that is very different in Germany is merging onto the freeway, so the Autobahn in Germany. As a driver student in Germany, you're always taught to put the pedal to the metal as soon as you're on the acceleration lane. I can't believe there's no English translation for Vollgas geben. On American freeways or interstates, however, the speeds aren't that high anyway, and the acceleration lanes are significantly longer, so that I don't have to do that here. I mean, I accelerate, of course, but not nearly as much as in Germany. And so whenever I go onto the Autobahn again for the first time, I have to actively remember that the acceleration lane is going to be really short and that I have to fully accelerate and merge over as soon as possible. Last year, I remember there was a moment when my friend in Germany was like, Feli, you do realize that you have to get over, right? Because I was taking my time merging and forgot that the lane was about to end. Other things that I actively notice because I enjoy them a lot is how active everyone is in Germany. I mean, all year round really, but especially in the summer, it's so nice how you can take your bike everywhere, how everything is pedestrian friendly, and that you can just go to the rivers and lakes to have a barbecue and drink wherever you want to. I also enjoy that there's so much public transportation, and something that I never appreciated before, that there's so much beautiful old architecture. That was just normal to me growing up there, but now I can actually appreciate that. So those were the things that I've dealt with or still deal with as part of my reverse culture shock back home in Germany. But I know that some of you have experienced this as well. So who of you has also dealt with either culture shock or reverse culture shock before? Let me know in the comments below and share your experiences. Also, please let me know if you would like to see a video about tips on how to deal with culture shock and some other things that I've been taught at intercultural trainings before. I know that's not a topic that will concern all of you, but maybe some of you might find it helpful. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up and of course subscribe to my channel for free. And you can also support me by hitting that super thanks button underneath the video, join my Patreon family, or just buy me a drink on buymeacoffee.com. That's such a nice gesture when people do that, so thank you so much. Of course, you can also find me on social media. These are my handles, so I will either see you there or at my next video. Tschüss!